Welcome to the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm David Knight. It's Wednesday, November 28th, 2012, and here are our top stories.
Tonight, was the Batman shooter a Manchurian candidate? An inmate claims he was programmed to carry out the massacre by an evil therapist. Then, the global government now seeks total control over the internet. And a New Jersey professor angrily claims that Joseph Stalin didn't kill anybody.
Yet to find one crime that Stalin committed.
Whatever you say, pal. All that and much more up next on the InfoWars Nightly News.
Well, in an update to the Aurora, Colorado shooting, an inmate, Stephen R. Unruh, claims that he talked to Holmes for 4 hours and talked him out of suicide. But more interesting is what he had to say about what Holmes was telling him about the actual shooting. He says that Holmes told him he felt like he was in a video game. During the shooting, he wasn't on his meds and nobody would help him. He says Holmes also mentioned NLP, presumably neuro-linguistic programming, and claimed to have been programmed to kill by an evil therapist. When he got out of his car, he wasn't programmed no more, Unruh says. It sounds kind of crazy. He was trying to run it by me, basically. Well, it doesn't sound crazy to those of us who are familiar with MKUltra. As a matter of fact, it sounds like the CIA's MO. But the police deny that this could have happened. Captain Vince Sauter of the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office says that even if they were booking at the same time, they couldn't shout from one cell to another like that. For someone to say that they were communicating with this person, it can't happen. And Lieutenant J.D. Knight, no relation to me, who directly supervises booking operations, said it would be virtually impossible for Mr. Unruh to have any of the communication he has stated. Well, it's interesting that they would have those comments, because when another story surfaced a little while back, there was a female who was interred at the same medical facility with Holmes, and she made some statements about things she overheard him saying. And at the time, the same sheriff's office said that they could not make any comment about anything because they were under a gag order from a judge. But evidently that doesn't apply in this case. Now, Unruh says that actually he was able to communicate by shouting through a small gap in cell doors that moved back and forth on rails. And what he said was, Holmes said he initially went into the theater for the sole purpose of finding his therapist, who he believed would be waiting there for him. And while he said he was programmed to commit a shooting spree, he wasn't exactly sure if he was supposed to do it on that particular night. Once he got inside the theater, however, he claims that he heard something in the movie's musical score that told him it was time to shoot certain people, though not everyone. Now, Paul Joseph Watson's article points out that the CIA's use of mind control to create killers is a matter of historical record. We all know about the Church Committee, Frank Church talking to then-director Richard Helms about heart attack guns, about MKUltra. Some of those documents have been declassified. Most of them have been destroyed. A 14-year CIA veteran, Victor Marchetti, claims that the program is ongoing and has not been abandoned. Now, you may also recall, for historical purposes, that this happened 1 week exactly before the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty was to be voted on. Now, that Arms Trade Treaty was supposed to be a mechanism to take care of the travel of arms across, the illegal travel of arms across borders, exactly like Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious, however, blew up in the government's face when an officer was killed in that. And so this was something that, in my opinion, perhaps they brought this in to try to build pressure for gun control, but it had exactly the opposite effect. It created a spike in gun sales, and the UN Arms Trade Treaty was delayed. And they said that it would happen probably before the end of the year. And in fact, the United Nations reached an agreement meeting on November the 6th on Election Day. They reached an agreement about the UN Arms Trade Treaty. They were ready to move in the lame duck session if they needed to, but it's now been delayed to March because they have more Democratic senators who will support such an agreement. This is something that is going to put the UN is going to establish a precedent that the UN has some say-so over our internal gun rights, because it's going to require registration as well as identification of all firearms. That's something that no one who values the Second Amendment wants to see. Well, we move from people who are programmed to kill people to people who are programmed to kill our economy. Jamie Dimon has been picked now by Warren Buffett as someone he thinks would be the best person to lead the Treasury Department. Who is Jamie Dimon? Well, he's J.P. Morgan Chase's CEO. And you might remember that as part of the TARP, they accepted $25 billion worth of TARP money, and they used the FDIC to issue $40 billion in unsecured debt. Now, to put that in perspective, Portugal is looking at a 78 billion euro bailout. Dimon's company got $65 billion, which is pretty close to that, and that was for his private company. And now they've lost $6.2 billion and was called before Congress to explain how that would happen. Of course, it was a very gentle affair with Mr. Dimon. They didn't want to press him too hard on that. Warren Buffett just dismisses that. He says, obviously, you know, there was a failure of control. He said, if you run an army, if you run a church, if you run a government or any large institution, people will go off the reservation sometimes. So, you know, the fact that he lost all that TARP, all those billions, tens of billions of dollars worth of TARP money, that's nothing that should deter us from having him as Treasury Secretary. I guess that kind of uniquely qualifies him. If he's able to lose large amounts of money with a company, he can now move to the country. When someone fails in an enterprise like this, you know, and most companies or most churches, as Warren Buffett mentioned, or something else, you don't usually move them up to higher responsibility unless they're connected with something like the Council on Foreign Relations. Let's take a look at this clip where Richard Haas of the Council on Foreign Relations is introducing Mr. Dimon.
I'm Richard Haas, and I want to welcome all of you to the Council on Foreign Relations and to today's CEO Speaker Series meeting. This is part of the Council on Foreign Relations corporate program, which is supposed to increase the connections and links between the business community and the foreign policy community, which to some extent are one and the same. I also want to thank...
Did you catch that? He said the business community and the foreign policy community are essentially one and the same. Now, I guess since big business controls our foreign policies, we also know now that DuPont and big business is controlling our food. DuPont is sending in former cops to enforce seed patents, Bloomberg TV reports. Bloomberg says that DuPont, the world's second biggest seed company, is sending dozens of former police officers across North America to prevent a practice generations of farmers once took for granted, and that is replanting their seeds. These are genetically modified seeds that Monsanto jealously guards the patents for, and they want farmers to buy those each and every year, or they're going to sue them in court. This is something that will probably go before the Supreme Court, but if you remember, in India, farmers who are planting genetically modified seeds, some of them planted them, but many who didn't had those genetically modified plants got fertilized into their seeds, and they were sued by Monsanto. So many of them were being sued for so much money that there was a massive amounts of farmer suicides in India. So, you know, it's starting to happen here now. Monsanto is after total control of our food supply. And the sad thing about it is that they want to, with the soybeans, I think they said that they have 82% of the global crop and 94% of the crop of soybeans in the U.S. is now Monsanto GMO soybeans. Well, from total control of our food to total control of our information, the United Nations is getting ready to have a conference that would give a UN agency known as the International Telecommunications Union the ability to control the Internet. That's right. They want to control the Internet to various governments, many of them authoritarian, and they will cooperate with each other on squelching free speech. as well as setting fees for people. This is not something that I think any of us want to see, especially when we realize what government has a history of doing. And we must not forget government's history and authoritarian governments that are not accountable, where there's no free speech and there's no information. But, you know, actually, even when information gets out about what governments do, sometimes history professors like to rewrite the history. And we have a video that Paul Joseph Watson picked up about a New Jersey professor who is angrily claiming that Stalin killed nobody. Let's go to that tape.
You finished asking? I'm going to answer you. What you said is bullshit. Out of all the falsifications that go on in the school systems in this country, this world, Soviet history is falsified the most. Yet to find one crime that Stalin committed.
And I would like to quote Stalin, a great humanist. Stalin used to say, death of one person is a tragedy. Death of a million, just statistic.
Now, that last guy, he said Stalinist is a great humanist. He was actually making fun of the first professor. But the first professor is Montclair State University English professor Dr. Grover Furr. He angrily proclaimed that one of history's most brutal dictators, Joseph Stalin, was not guilty of a single crime. Now, this is in spite of the fact that Nikita Khrushchev apologized in 1956 for the people that Stalin had killed, and of course a lot of those people died going to Siberia, but many were murdered. Even the Soviet Union says that agrees that 3 million people were killed. Most historians put that number at 20 million. But, you know, that's Nikita Khrushchev. He's not exactly Mr. Touchy-feely. This is the guy who went to the United Nations, took off his shoe, and banged the podium screaming at America, "We will bury you, we will bury you." You know, it's that Khrushchev, you know. But, yeah, he can't be believed that Stalin was a mass murderer. Well, that brings us to our quote of the day, something for you to think about when you're confronting the TSA on opt-out and film day. We gain strength and courage and confidence by each experience in which we really stop to look fear in the face. We must do that which we think we cannot. Eleanor Roosevelt. And maybe she didn't have the TSA in mind, but I think that's appropriate when you confront them. It's something that we all need to do. And we'll be talking to Jason Burmis later in the show in an interview, talking about how he confronted the TSA. Some of us here at InfoWars had our own experiences over the holidays. David Ortiz did, and had a good film about his confrontation with people trying to keep him from exercising his First Amendment rights. You know, something, you use it or you lose it, folks. And along those lines, I've got two words for you: drone mob. That's right, December 8th in Austin. And if you don't know what that's about, look up the hashtag drone mob or check out Planet InfoWars. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Alex Jones here with a message that could revolutionize health in this country. Going back about 1.5 years ago, I began to learn about the incredible health effects of longevity products. Aaron Dykes lost 92 pounds. We're going to show you some before and afters. Aaron, break down what happened, your story.
I've worked really hard with diet and exercise to try to lose weight, but I just didn't get the results. It just didn't happen. Then I saw what you were doing with InfoWarsTeam.com. I wasn't even trying to lose weight, but I got it because I wanted to feel better energy. I wanted that nutrition. Didn't even understand how that could kickstart my own weight loss goals, but the products did that for me. I found myself suddenly losing weight, more energetic, wanting to exercise, wanting to eat the right foods.
And they don't even advertise it as weight loss. I want to challenge our radio listeners to go to InfoWarsTeam.com. Sign up as a distributor and get wholesale pricing discounts at InfoWarsTeam.com.